Hey everyone. So yesterday I left a post on Facebook talking a little bit about what happened to me and my family 8 years ago, and I realized that yes, I post usually every year just how grateful I am about being alive to this day, and I've never really gone into full detail about what happened. Because it is super private and personal, and I thought, honestly, this might be the right time to share with the world what happened. And I pray that it can be used as a light for the Lord. And if you don't like talking about blood and all of that kind of stuff, then I suggest not watching this, because it is going to get kind of personal with some things. And I'm not going to go into gory detail, but it is going to be kind of specific to what happened to me. So it gets kind of cheesy. I wrote it 7 years ago after the whole ordeal happened. So it's kind of like a diary, which I am not a diary kind of person, but I felt like I needed to get it off my chest, and I wanted to write down the facts and everything that happened. So I'm just gonna read it for you, and yes, it gets cheesy sometimes, but it was coming from the heart in that moment when I was writing it. So here we go. And hopefully I don't cry. I read it before and I'll just lose it because, it's pretty emotional. I was 18 years old, fresh out of my first year of college. My life was smooth and exciting. I came back from college with a pretty sure notion in my mind that I have found the man who will love me the rest of my life, and successfully completing all of my credits that first year. With no worries in my life, I enjoyed the summer breeze and babysitting, and every now and then to swing back and forth in a hammock in the shade. Yes, it gets a little cheesy. Just enjoy it. With all that in mind, as a healthy 18-year-old, I found it very strange that my period was lasting for an entire 2 weeks. One day I could not walk from my kitchen to my living room without stopping and bending over to take a breath. I couldn't even walk up the stairs. I had to crawl, hoping I could get to the top without passing out. This has never happened to me before. To understand what was happening to my body, we quickly drove to the emergency room. Once we arrived, they took my blood levels. The results were not good. They poked me with an IV line, and someone else's blood started flowing into my body. I was still oblivious to the seriousness of what was happening. The hospital that I was currently at knew that there was something going on with my body, and they decided to transport me to another hospital. I was not stable at that moment in time. They hooked me up to an oxygen mask with the bag of blood dangling over my head and rolled me out of that hospital onto the ambulance. With sirens blaring, we quickly arrived to the other hospital. While in the ER room and many nurses and doctors surrounding me, I was still unaware to the significance of the situation. I was admitted at the hospital for a total of 2 weeks. My first week there, many tests were done to come to a conclusion of what was happening in my body. I soon understood that my white blood cells, platelets, and hemoglobin levels were extremely low. An idea of normal white blood cells would be 4.0. Excuse my dog. So a normal white blood cell count would be 4.0. I got to be as low as 0.4. This was considered being neutropenic, meaning I could not fight off sicknesses. A normal level for platelets is 150,000 to 400,000. My lowest level was at 6,000. Now for the hemoglobin, normal levels for a female would be 12 to 14. My lowest levels were at 6. These numbers meant nothing to me. All I knew was that I was getting huge bruises under my feet just from walking, that they had to push me around in a wheelchair because it hurt so bad. Plus, I didn't have the blood in me to support me walking around. I also had to wear a mask whenever I went outside of my room, and I had to have other people assist me to do everyday normal activities. They finally had to do a bone marrow biopsy. They took a special needle to extract bone marrow out of my hip bone. At this point, the doctors finally diagnosed me with idiopathic severe aplastic anemia, which I've never heard of before. Severe aplastic anemia is a very rare blood disease which affects only 3 out of every 1 million people. It's when the bone marrow stops producing enough red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets for the body. Idiopathic means that the source of where it originated from is unknown. Now knowing the diagnosis is when the treatment started to occur without wasting any time. Going back to school that next semester was out of the question. Throughout my entire time undergoing treatments, I had to have infusions of blood and platelets. I had over 45 bags of infusions of blood and platelets going into my system. They put a PICC line in my arm that had a tube going to my heart because I was getting so many infusions. This helped a lot because I heavily disliked being poked with IV lines all the time. The doctors even joked about me taking all of the blood out of the blood bank. At that point, we were going back to the hospital 3 days per week. It became normal that they would fill me up on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays and just hope that that would get me through the weekend until Monday again. Along with the infusions, I was also on immunosuppressive therapies called cyclosporin, which are drugs that weaken the immune system. They literally smelled like a skunk just sprayed. At this point, it was probably about 2 months that I was bleeding, causing them to put me on 4 birth control pills and giving me a Depo-Provera injection that gave me menopausal symptoms such as hot flashes. Crazy. For 4 days, I was on a 9-hour chemotherapy called ATGAM. Thankfully, it wasn't a chemotherapy that affected my hair or fertility, but when I was on it the first day, it was making me uncontrollably shake, and it also gave me an allergic reaction, giving me hives all over my body. The next few days after that, it gave me side effects such as nausea, vomiting, fatigue, and a horrible pain in my chest. The only cure for aplastic anemia is a bone marrow transplant. This would mean me having to be isolated in a hospital room for 40 days. If people wanted to visit, they would have to suit up in a special gown covering their bodies. I would go on yet another chemotherapy that would cause me to lose my hair and probably lose the opportunity to have kids on my own. After the ATGAM chemotherapy, immunosuppressive drug therapy, and infusions, my levels were still not getting better. My brother and sister were tested to see if they were a match for my bone marrow, and neither were matches. The doctors were trying to find a bone marrow match out of the millions that are registered, and there were no perfect matches. If we decided to do a bone marrow transplant with someone that didn't have a perfect match, there would be a very good chance that I would develop graft versus host disease. This is where the new cells would see my cells as being foreign and would start attacking my body. The first stage to see if graft versus host disease is occurring is a simple skin rash. Ultimately, however, there is a very good chance that it would become life-threatening. After hearing this, I went outside and cried. My mom came with me and we were just holding each other and bawling our eyes out. Dad stayed inside. Come on, Mary Jo, get it together. Dad stayed inside to keep talking with the doctors. We realized that over 6 months of all the different treatments, nothing had worked. Come on. After we were done and the tissue box was empty, yes, very cheesy, we decided to pray and give this all to the Lord. I knew from the very beginning of finding out that I had severe aplastic anemia that I was going to use this as an opportunity to be a light for the Lord through whatever I was going to have to endure. Whew, come on. It was my decision and my choice to find joy every single day and to be thankful for the way the Lord would answer my prayers. Either it be no, maybe, or yes. James 1:2-4 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." This verse not only helped me hold to the joy and complete peace that I had found in the Lord, but it made me feel honored that He would let me go through a trial that neither me or the doctors would know if I would either live or die. Come on, get it together. I cannot imagine going through this experience if I didn't have my Lord and Savior to rely on. If you can't give your life to our Creator, who or what would you have hope in? Well, after that day, we went back home. We prayed as a family and I went to bed. My thoughts, of course, consisted of wanting to finish school, find a job, get married and have kids, so on. However, I knew that my life was in God's hands, even if it was for the purpose of not being able to live on this earth for much longer. And through that, people would come to know the Lord as their Savior. The next day, I spent time with family and friends. And the next day after that, we went back for the routine checking of my blood counts. We had the hope that the Lord could have given us a miracle, but We were also not going to be surprised because the dropping of my blood platelet and white blood counts were expected. I'm still here today because of that one specific day. The very first day that my platelets rose for the first time without any help from infusions, drugs, or chemotherapy. It was an absolute miracle, no question. It was from the Lord. You can just imagine the smiles, laughs, and praises that we were displaying in that hospital room. Ever since that day, my levels have been rising, and now I have normal counts in my blood counts, platelet counts, and white blood cell counts that any healthy person would have. The doctors are shocked this has happened because they've never seen it before. The survival rate, listen to this, I totally forgot about this. The survival rate for those that have a bone marrow transplant is 80%. I did not have that. Those that can only do the ATGAM chemotherapy, like myself, the survival rate is only 40%. However, those that survive with the ATGAM chemotherapy usually only stay around the 80,000 for platelet counts compared to the normal 150,000 to 400,000 count, and there's 1/3 of people who need to keep doing the chemotherapy every couple of years. It's been 8 years, I haven't had to do anything. This has honestly been a miracle, and I cannot sit around and not tell people about it. I hope this is encouraging to you today, and I hope that you see the Lord is still working miracles every single day in people's lives. I pray that if this touched you, to be able to share it, and if you haven't trusted the Lord as your Savior, know that He loves you with all of His heart, and He wants the best for you, and He wants you to know Him. He is your Savior. He is our Creator. I love all of you, and if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Have a wonderful day. Bye.